Guys, welcome to Analytics Advantage. Just some quick news, housekeeping. So last year, if anybody was paying attention to this channel, I had a website going that was kind of keeping track of the stats and bets and stocks and things like that. The website is still up, but I'll be honest with you, it has not been fruitful for me to keep running that website. And I know some people were checking it out just to kind of get the info and stats. And that's great. I'm glad that you guys did. But I do think that YouTube is probably the way to go moving forward. It's just it's a little bit faster as far as giving you the content. There's more people checking it out, and I don't have such a problem trying to get views. Not that I have a million people watching these videos, but when you have your own website and you're trying to promote it, it costs money to advertise it and to hope people find it, and then to try and get them to come back. When really all I'm trying to do is maybe do some ads on there, and it's just not really paying out. So anyways, just moving forward, it's going to be pretty much strictly YouTube with some other social media, some things on like Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that. So today's video, I'll try and keep it as short as possible. It's going to be another way too early week 1 pick. If you watched my last video, or you pay attention to my Twitter account, which is at @FantasyFrijole, you probably saw that my best bet for week 1, and I'm going to give it to you right now, is the Jaguars at Texans under 45.5. I'll be honest with you, I already placed that bet. You can probably still wait. I haven't checked the line on it just yet or recently. I kind of want to just grab it because I do think that as we get closer, that number is going to keep going down. Especially if we get news that Deshaun Watson is not, he's not going to play, he's definitely out, that number is going to go down. So you might want to grab it a little bit sooner than later. Just keep in mind your money's going to get tied up. But every day that goes by, obviously it's one less day that your money's tied up. So that all being said, today's pick is my second pick, and it is the Colts versus the Seahawks, or the Seahawks at the Colts, I should say, for week 1. And the line, I'll be honest, totally shocked me. I had seen it previously, like when they first released lines, and I just thought, okay, that's got to be something's wrong there, or maybe I don't know something, and it's kind of where it's at. It's gonna change for sure. People are gonna jump on that, or maybe I'll find out what the reasoning is behind this line. It's been about a month now. Nothing has changed. I've done my research. I am still waiting on Warren Sharp's book. If you guys don't know, I love Warren Sharp. I love reading his book every year. I pre-order it, and I try to read as much of that thing as I can, like the day it comes out. So be aware, if you're not paying the full, $35 for the book when it comes out, I am going to give you a lot of the information from that book, a synopsis of that book, to save you the time, save you the money, and kind of the understanding on that book. Not that it's terribly hard, but when you're trying to sit there and remember everything for each individual team, it kind of becomes a task. So that being said, the Colts this year and the Seahawks, I'll be honest with you, they didn't really make a lot of moves that kind of moved the needle for me. I think the Colts, the biggest move that they made was bringing in Carson Wentz as a quarterback. And so Frank Reich, if you don't know, he took over the head coaching job in 2018. So he's done it for 3 seasons. This is going to be his 4th season. And somebody out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's had 4 different quarterbacks starting each season for him. So he had Andrew Luck, then he had Jacoby Brissett the next year, and then he had Phillip Rivers, and then coming into this year, he's going to have Carson Wentz. So this poor dude has not had a quarterback stay with him longer than a year. And I actually think that Phillip Rivers, aside from Andrew Luck, of course, was better than Jacoby Brissett. He kind of knew the system. He was familiar with Frank Reich, and I honestly had high expectations for them last year. Just didn't work out. Phillip Rivers he fell off a cliff a little bit faster than we thought he was going to. But that is what it is. With Frank Reich this year coming in and another quarterback, and Carson Wentz, he's never been somebody I'm really, really interested in. He doesn't move the needle for me. He doesn't really mean, oh my gosh, I need to give them 3 more points because, they got this guy coming in at quarterback. I've never been impressed with him, and maybe some of it is just the the guys he's played with, the receivers he's had to play with. The Eagles just did not put a lot of talent around him. I know he had a couple years there with like Alshon and, just kind of in and out of some other guys, but it's always been like an injury thing. They never have enough receivers. So maybe he's better than I'm thinking he is, but I'll wait until I see it, because the Colts are not this abundance of receiving talent either. They got T.Y. Hilton, who, might be good against, like, the Texans every year. That's about it. Michael Pittman, who I had high expectations for last year, and Phillip Rivers just couldn't get him the ball. So maybe he's going to be better this year with Carson Wentz, but that's a lot of questions for me. I mean, even like Mo Alley-Cox, Trey Burton, they have tight ends, and I think that's probably who, if the offense is geared to run this way, which I couldn't really tell you. I have a lot of stats on Frank Reich and the Colts, but because the quarterback has changed every year, I couldn't tell you if these stats are driven by the coach and what he wants to do and kind of establish, or if it's driven by each quarterback and how they saw the offense and what they were comfortable with doing. So it's a lot of questions here, and you're really just taking a guess at this thing. I think that Carson Wentz does like, working through his tight ends like we saw with Zach Ertz. I think that Frank Reich loves using his tight ends. We saw him play lots of 3 tight end sets last year. If I'm not wrong, I believe he has the most 3 tight end receiving sets. And he's got the guys to do it, Mo Alley-Cox and Trey Burton, and I apologize, I'm leaving out the third guy, but he's got the talent to do it. So I think that that's going to be kind of their game, is working these tight ends a lot. I'm not saying go grab one for fantasy, because who knows which tight end's going to have what week, but it's a possibility, and I think that they're just going to be a really ground and pound, let's run through Jonathan Taylor, and then when we do need the pass, we're probably going to, try to just hit our tight ends over the middle and just keep everything real close to the line, not let Carson Wentz mess us up and kind of get us out of our plan. So that's how I am figuring this offense is going to run, and I think the stats kind of back that up. I do think that they have a decent defense. If we look at the Colts last year, Frank Reich as a coach, he received a grade of 42, which is actually not bad. That's just like about average or just a little over. The EDSR is kind of what threw me off there, and if you're not familiar with it, it's early down success rate, the biggest indicator of kind of a win-loss situation, and he had a 49 EDSR. Now, some of that could have been Phillip Rivers, but Phillip Rivers, he wasn't terrible. The 49 EDSR, honestly, it's not like, oh my god, this is terrible, that they'll never win a game, but it's not inspiring either. It's very much dependent on what the defense is going to give you. Now, the Seahawks offer a 51% defensive EDSR, meaning they allow 51% successful plays on early downs, which gives them some wiggle room. But it comes down to a 50-50 chance. And so in 3 plays, or really 2 plays, either your 2 early downs, you got a chance that one of them is going to be successful, meaning that it's going to get like 5 yards. So a lot of times I can see these guys into like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and, somewhere around there. And there's going to be a lot of situations where they get stuck back even further than that. And if I had to guess, I'd say at the beginning of the year is probably when you're going to see kind of a decrease in production, just because Carson Wentz is still going to be trying to get in sync with these guys. The coaching staff is still trying to implement more and more plays. And lastly, and this is really where I got this line from, or where I got this pick from, Frank Reich himself he's really poor at starting off seasons. He is much better once the season goes along, and I think he is more of the kind of like in the mold of a Sean Payton, where they use their stats and they try to use analytics to pick apart their defenses and run their game plans, which I think is really smart, and I think that's the way most coaches should work. The problem is, week 1, there's not a lot to go off of. Yes, you kind of know what the Seahawks are and maybe what they want to play and who they're going to use, but fact of the matter is, every offseason does change. Personnel maybe nuanced, but there are changes. Coaching staff is going to change a little bit. There are going to be some different plays. There's going to be some copycat stuff from years other teams. And like we saw last year, beginning of the year, the Seahawks were totally fine with letting Russell Wilson cook and just pass and pass and pass and pass. And that was awesome. I mean, for us, for fantasy and for gambling purposes. But who knows what they're going to do at the beginning of this year. The Seahawks, on the other hand, I'm going to kind of transition to them now. They went and they drafted a wide receiver in the second round. Same thing, like I said, they didn't have a lot of picks that inspired me. It was just kind of like, okay, well, they got the same guys back. I do think Chris Carson is better than a lot of us give him credit for. He is injury prone, and I hate to use that because it's the NFL. Like, you can get hurt whenever. It's like saying a boxer is, cut prone. Like, maybe, but the dude's getting hit in the face all the time. Like, eventually, yeah, something's going to happen. So, but I do think that Chris Carson is better than a lot of us are giving him credit for. The Seahawks, the grade for Pete Carroll was 45 last year, which, 3 percentage points doesn't sound a whole lot, but each percentage point in my grading system is worth half a point, like a real point. So if I were setting this line, I would have put the Seahawks minus 1.5. And the Seahawks, I apologize if I didn't say this off the bat, but Seahawks are actually 3-point dogs in this game. Seahawks plus 3 is the line right now. So not only do I think that that's off, I think it's completely wrong. I think that it should have been at most like the Colts minus 1, but really, I truly, just going off my stats, my numbers, and even my perception of these teams, I would have set this line at Seahawks minus 1 and made the Colts a home dog week 1. But, I mean, like I said, I tried to dig up information and kind of see was there coaching changes, different players, what's going on here? Why is there such a drastic difference from what I'm looking at? And the only thing I can tell you is the same thing that I say every year. The beginning of the year is when we see the most discrepancy when it comes to handicapping games and the way that Vegas sees games. And that's good for us. That's usually the most profitable time of the season for me. So, last point here, and then I'll get out of your hair, is when we look at opening games, and I'm going to look back from when Frank Reich first took over this team. We can see what I was saying earlier with Frank Reich really struggling that first week and trying to kind of, get the wheels turning and being able to take advantage of the defense without having any current season info on them. We have the Colts. The Colts over the last 3 years have lost all 3 opening games. And I'm not saying it's not like they went and they lost, to the Chiefs and they lost to the Patriots the year before, and they weren't losing to these high caliber teams. They lost to some pretty precarious looking teams. Last year, I'm sure you remember this because it was the biggest upset almost of the season. They lost to the Jags in week 1 with Gardner Minshew under the helm, and they didn't just lose by a point. It wasn't a last minute field goal. They lost by 7. That was just not a good game, and they got back on track afterwards, like I'm saying, and just to kind of fit the mold of what I'm telling you here. It got back together, but they just did not start this off the right way, and I can only compare this to the Saints because I saw Sean Payton do this, and I still see Sean Payton doing this. The beginning of every season is a very slow, rough start until they incorporate their offense, but also until they get stats on their opponents. The year before that, they lost to the Chargers minus 6. That was the year that was still Phillip Rivers. So I mean, the team was okay. It wasn't great. Obviously, they didn't do much, but they were at least decent. And that was the year with Jacoby Brissett for the Colts. So kind of it's not as relevant as last year is. And then before that, they lost to the Bengals by 11. So not only are they losing, but they're not losing by a point. They're losing pretty handily, at least in terms of NFL. Seahawks, on the other hand, they've won their last 2 opening games against the Falcons. They won by 13. Year before that, they won against the Bengals by 1. The Seahawks love playing these close games, and so that doesn't surprise me that they won it against the Bengals by 1. They're one of those teams that will just get up by 7, and then they'll be like, okay, let's just run the ball now the entire game. So don't let that dissuade you too much. Secondly, though, or I guess thirdly, they lost to the Broncos. That's the one loss they had in the last 3 years as far as opening games are concerned. And with the Broncos, if you didn't already know this, the Broncos actually have a home field advantage, a drastic home field advantage the first 2 weeks of the year because they have the mile high advantage, and it's still the beginning of the season, and the temperature is still pretty hot. We have players who are not in mid-season form yet, coming into high altitude, thin air, and still high temperatures where they're getting drained before by halftime. So that loss, while it's not great, obviously it would be better if they won, doesn't surprise me either. If the Broncos, it's crazy because NFL never plays the Broncos at home those first 2 weeks. I think they're aware of that situation, and they kind of don't want to give them those wins. So, again, that win doesn't surprise me, but it happened. Obviously, it would have been better if they won. That being said, though, again, I would do land as much as you can on this game. It's my second favorite pick is Seahawks +3. And honestly, I'll probably just do half and half with Seahawks +3 and the Seahawks just straight up on the money line while you still can. I don't even know if this is going to be a one-possession game, but I will tell you that last year, both of these teams, the Seahawks had 10 one-possession games or one-score games, and the Colts had 6. So they both, they're not adverse to playing these real tight games. And with a 70% win record for the Seahawks and 67% win record for the Colts, they're not shy about keeping these games close. So even if the Seahawks win, I don't think it's going to be a huge blowout. I think it's going to be by a few points. But if you can get the +3 while you're still getting that key number, grab it right now. Make sure you're locking in that 3. Again, very key number, especially with these two teams, because I could see something happening where maybe the Colts do pull off the win. Somehow some miracle comes through, but they're winning by 1. So keep that in mind, grab the 3, and have a good day, guys. Hopefully this was helpful.